An orgasmic Christmas, return of the Krampus. In the depths of wintry woods lay a fallen soul, his heart left broken by love that once made him whole. The frigid breeze swirled round his motionless frame and drifted skyward, whispering his name. What was once a terror, who fed on fear, now lay cold and ruined, his end painfully clear. After a peaceful year of Timmers, void of dread, the Tims and Jims of Triggerville believed the darkness dead. Timothy was gone, his menace ceased, and Triggerville readied for a time of peace. It would yet again be a joyful holiday, cheerfully sought. Or so they thought. In a cabin distant, far from the cheer, lived a desperate man consumed by fear. After years in prison, he longed to start anew, to love Timmers again, like he once used to do. But isolation had twisted his mind, and the role he once played was lost to time. No longer Timothy Claus, nor giver of delight, he'd become Mr. Clown, burdened by spite. He once wished to give, to dazzle and glow, but that stupid cow had stolen the show. To reclaim his name and cast off the dread, he knew one thing: that cow must be dead. A wicked idea bloomed in his brain, a plan to cleanse the world of pain. To seize the workshop and all it held dear, he'd need a soul twisted by vengeance and fear. Though he hated him deeply for ruining his fate, only one man could unlock that gate. And so, Mr. Clown, in his madness and grief, began crafting a serum beyond belief. He toiled for days with mixtures arcane, failing, retrying, nearly driven insane. But at last he emerged with a potent solution, a shimmering vial of deadly restitution. With horn pickle juice so frightfully rare, he had just one shot, no room to spare. Slipping into his old festive suit, warm but proud, he stepped from his shack beneath grey clouds. Through the frost-bitten wilds he journeyed alone, drawn to the corpse that once sat on the throne. The head was detached, the flesh scorched and black, yet still he felt Timothy's presence. Staring back, he lifted the skull with a shudder of dread and placed it atop the neck of the dead. From his coat he retrieved the syringe with care, pausing mid-breath in the cold, biting air. Could he really bring back the monster he loathed? Would Timothy rise or remain decomposed? Mr. Clown stared at the face he once feared, the face that had haunted him year after year. But he silenced his doubts and gritted his teeth, plunging the needle deep underneath. The serum surged in a venomous tide as Mr. Clown whispered, "Let the darkness arise." A sudden shock ripped through his body, surging like lightning across every nerve. Timothy's senses reeled, disoriented and overwhelmed. His eyes snapped open in terror as he gasped for air, as though he'd been holding it for years. He sat up, trembling, while the searing jolts gradually faded. Breathing heavily, he raised his hands to his head, reassuring himself it was still there. The memory of its severance lingered like a ghost. Was he still dead? Before he could fully grasp the question, a high-pitched ringing pierced his ears, throwing his balance into chaos. The world around him blurred. He blinked rapidly, eyes struggling to adjust, until he realized everything had lost its color. A bleak, grayscale void surrounded him. Nothing looked real. It was like stepping into a dream where the laws of reality no longer applied. The ringing grew louder, more forceful, until his eyes were drawn forward, pulled by something unseen. As the fog in his vision cleared, a distant silhouette emerged. The land twisted unnaturally around the ominous figure, as if it were the center of some gravitational anomaly. It called to him without words, luring him with quiet intensity. Driven by something primal, Timothy stood and stepped forward. The figure began to fade, slipping further away with every step, yet he continued. He trudged onward into the desolate tundra, shadowy whispers slithering around him, calling his name in deep, reverberating tones. On either side, towering spruces loomed like silent sentinels, and with each step, the whispers grew louder, building into a chilling crescendo. Then, silence. Everything stopped. No wind, no whispers. The stillness was absolute. Timothy froze at the center of this warped dreamscape. The figure had vanished. Suddenly, his pulse spiked, hammering in his chest without rhythm. A blinding green light exploded across the sky as a thunderous voice echoed around him. "It's almost time." The voice surged through him, shaking his bones. "Harness my energy, and we shall meet again." The words resonated with raw power. Timothy's eyes ignited with an eerie green flame as the ground cracked beneath his feet. He screamed, his body overwhelmed by a torrent of ancient energy flooding his veins. The sky above grew impossibly bright, and reality itself collapsed around him, consumed by radiant white until nothing remained but a void. He gasped awake. Snowflakes drifted softly around him as he lay in the heart of a lush forest. The world had colour once more, but his irises had darkened into a deep, unnatural green. Disoriented, he slowly sat up until something caught his gaze. There, standing before him, was Mr. Clown, a grim expression on his painted face, an empty syringe clenched tightly in his hand. The town of Triggerville. Now, let us begin the true tale of Timmers, the one we've all been waiting for. After a splendid holiday the year before, aside from that whole alien pandemic lore, the Tims and Jims of Triggerville were buzzing with glee, ready to share their wild Timmer spirit with all of humanity. Following the fall of Bim and his chaos the night before Timmers, the Misfits became heroes, world famous, no gimmicks or fuss. And now the season returned, the snow gently swirling, with lights strung up and Timmer's magic whirling. The great malefactor, Timothy Jimothy, was finally no more, and Triggerville's doors were bursting with joy, gifts and decor. Snowflakes danced from the sky with holiday flair, as bells jingled and stockings were hung with care. Presents were wrapped in paper, both glittery and loud, and the mighty Timmers tree stood tall and proud. With just one day till the season's height, excitement bubbled like cocoa on a cold winter night. But where, oh where, were the heroic misfits now? Well, my friends, they were busy, prepping with purpose and how. Far, far away, past mountains of snow, lay their wondrous workshop, aglow with warm glow. Let's take a peek and see what they're brewing this year, with toys, gadgets and gags sure to bring holiday cheer. 'Twas the morning before Timmers, and all through the shop the gadgets were whirring, the tinsel non-stop. New machines clanked with impressive might, tuning up toys till they jingled just right. Ricky Rat and Krampus polished the sleigh, while Mr. Monkey and Mr. Unicorn helped clear the way. The orgasmic cow tried on his new suit of red, but got distracted and ended up vigorously humping the sled. Philomelf now ran things with managerial grace, keeping toy production in its proper place. And unlike last year, don't worry, stay calm, there'd be no elf murders or unexpected bodily harm. The elves worked hard, giving toys final tweaks, as music blasted from peppermint-spewing leaks. The mountain of toys rose high to the ceiling. Beside it were the elves, ensuring Haxan Elf wasn't stealing. Once every present was perfectly stacked, they tossed them in Claus's big magical sack. With a heave and a ho, the misfits gave it a push, dragging it toward the sleigh through the snowy white slush. Their slick runway was buried beneath snowdrift and storm, a surprise they'd fix, somehow, with misfit reform. The orgasmic cow ensured no Tim was missed before his flight, checking his list not once, but thrice, and crossing off the Tims he didn't like. But everyone else was accounted for with care, their names neatly scribbled with glittery flair. With their work complete and their goals in sight, the misfits all gathered to bask in delight. Elves cheered with joy, their spirits restored, after wrapping up chaos that could not be ignored. And so, with a hop, skip and orgasmic cry, they mounted Mr. Unicorn and soared into the sky. Their mission was clear, the goal set in stone, deliver Timmers cheer and hopefully make it home. After a long and chaotic morning, the misfits returned home, exhausted, dishevelled and slightly sticky. As they prepared for their traditional 5-minute nap, the orgasmic cow remained upright and alert, surprisingly not tired in the slightest. Odd, considering he'd worked just as hard as everyone else, unless you count all the humping. While the rest trudged upstairs like overworked elves on peppermint fumes, the orgasmic cow flopped horizontally onto their stained leather couch, ready for some mindless TV. He lazily reached for the remote, missed and promptly tumbled off the couch like a sack of jingle bells. With a defeated sigh, he sat up, only to discover the remote now nestled between his legs. Convenient, he muttered, and turned on TimTube like it was the hardest thing he'd done all day. He flicked through channels aimlessly, enduring several cooking shows, conspiracy documentaries, and a confusing broadcast about sentient wheelbarrows, until he landed on something oddly familiar: choppy visuals, awkward elevator music, a nervous, sweaty spokesperson holding a bent hammer. "Oh, nuts, here we go again," the orgasmic cow whispered with a chuckle. "It's live this time." Home Jimpos, the notoriously terrible bargain bin rival of Tim's tools. He watched in sheer pity as the spokesperson snapped a hammer in half mid-demo and frantically cut to unrelated B-roll footage. The orgasmic cow laughed harder than he should have, wondering how many other people in Triggerville were also tuning in just to roast this train wreck. Then came a creak from the stairs. Ricky Rat appeared, rubbing his eyes. "What the hell are you watching?" "Oh, I'm just making fun of this Home Jimpos commercial. Want to join?" Ricky chuckled and plopped down beside him. "Sure, why not?" One by one, the rest of the misfits trickled back down, nap abandoned, curiosity piqued. Mr. Unicorn and Krampus joined in for the roast session, while Mr. Monkey swung into the kitchen to prepare his signature Timothy's Eve breakfast, charred pancakes and rubber. "Damn," Ricky muttered between laughs. "Nothing against Jims or anything, but let the Tims make the tools." The group erupted in snorts and giggles. When breakfast was ready, the four misfits rushed into the kitchen. Mr. Unicorn gallantly parked himself in the centre to serve as their dining table, and everyone gathered around. Mr. Monkey swung from the chandelier, placing plates with surprising grace. Mr. Unicorn glanced toward the frosted window and sighed dramatically. "Man, it sure is snowing this year." "Oh yeah, wow," said Ricky, crunching on some glass. "I think this is going to be the best Timmers yet," beamed the orgasmic cow, already itching to play outside. Suddenly, his wristwatch buzzed, a device that was definitely there before. "Oh, one sec, I'll be back," he said quickly, before abruptly teleporting away in a shimmer of holiday magic. The misfits shrugged and returned to their rubbery breakfast. Moments later, the orgasmic cow reappeared in his seat, wiping a milk sweat from his brow. "Sorry, someone touched the thermostat again." Ricky squinted. "Okay, but what does that mean?" "You bring that up like once a month." The orgasmic cow's eye twitched. "Well, you won't have to worry about him again." The kitchen lights flickered ominously. "Oops, sorry. I can get a little upset when someone tries to mess with the world's temperature, I guess." "Ooh." Ricky blinked. "Wait, there's a thermostat that controls the world's climate?" "Duh. What's weird about that?" Mr. Unicorn added casually. "That makes sense to me." Krampus nodded. "All righty then," Ricky said, finishing his plate of burnt rubber and cardboard. Once breakfast was over, the misfits returned to the living room, bundled up in coats, ready to embrace the snowy day. The orgasmic cow let out an overjoyed orgasm, his way of expressing excitement, and everyone braced for adventure. But just as they reached the door, he stopped cold. His head slowly rotated a full 360 degrees like an unnerving owlbot, then froze, eyes locked on the far corner of the room. "Guys," he said, voice suddenly serious. "What is it, orgasmic cow?" Mr. Unicorn asked. "It's gone." The room went silent. "What's gone?" Ricky asked nervously as they all turned to the couch's corner. They all gasped in unison. The pickle in the corner was gone, the mysterious, always their pickle. No, this can't be happening." Mr. Unicorn panicked. "Maybe he went for a walk," Ricky suggested. "He's never done that before," the orgasmic cow said grimly. "Do you know what this means?" "What?" asked Krampus. "If we don't find him soon, something bad is going to happen." "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," Ricky tried, hoping to calm the rising tension. Maybe," the orgasmic cow muttered, unconvinced. "We gotta find him before dusk. Come on." With that, the misfits zipped up their jackets and stormed out the door. The house fell silent. The television still flickered. The Home Jimpos ad played on, now riddled with static and strange digital glitches. Suddenly, footage cut what looked like Tim's violently attacking a Jim with prototype hammers. The spokesperson screamed off camera to end the broadcast in a panic. The screen glitched one final time, then cut to black. The Arctic Circle, 12 hours till Timmers. Jimothy lay motionless on the cold, snow-covered ground, his breath shallow, his mind racing. He stared up at the figure standing over him, Mr. Clown, stoic and waiting. Timothy's eyes narrowed with sudden fury. With a guttural yell, he lunged upward, slamming into Mr. Clown and driving him into the snow. "I'm not here to fight. Get off me!" Mr. Clown shouted, shoving him aside. Timothy rolled back, trembling with rage, barely able to steady his limbs. "Where the hell am I? What did you do?" "You've been dead for over a year," Mr. Clown snapped. "I brought you back to life, you idiot." "Why?" Timothy roared, his voice cracking. "There's no reason to live anymore." "Until now," Mr. Clown replied calmly, extending a hand, not in kindness, but control. "Think about it. The world has moved on. No one's expecting another attack. I brought you back because I need your help. If we work together, we could—" "I don't need you," Timothy snarled. In a flash, he yanked a small blade from Mr. Clown's utility belt and slashed it across his throat. Blood didn't pour. The wound sealed instantly. "What the hell?" Timothy gasped, stumbling back. "What did you do to me?" Mr. Clown sighed, brushing snow off his collar. "It's no use. I gave you the serum." Timothy stared at him, his chest heaving. The reality was finally sinking in. "If you want to kill me," Mr. Clown said softly, "I will not stop you. But I'll tell you this. Bim is dead. Everyone who ever stood by your side is gone. You have no one left." He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Except there is someone, a cow, bathing in your misery, laughing while the world forgets your name." Timothy clenched his jaw. A flicker of recognition. He thought back to the dream. That figure, the aura. Was it him? No, it couldn't be. But that presence, it felt familiar. Chillingly so. "It's Timothy Eve," Mr. Clown said, snapping him out of thought. "If we reach the workshop first, they'll come right to us." Timothy glared. "What do you want, huh? To be Timothy Claus? You can have it. I don't give a shit anymore." Mr. Clown didn't flinch. "I want what you've always wanted, to wipe those stupid creatures off the map, once and for all." He was lying, at least partly. Timothy knew it, but he didn't care. "Fine. Let's get this over with," Timothy muttered, turning away. "Do you even know where you're going?" "The workshop's this way. We need to make a stop first. Stock up on supplies." Timothy exhaled sharply through his nose. "Whatever, follow my lead," Mr. Clown said, walking ahead. Timothy fell into step behind him, the snow crunching beneath his boots. But then, a sudden jolt, a sharp pain shot through his spine. He stopped, staggering slightly. Reaching behind him, he felt something unnatural. Spikes. Long, jagged spikes now protruded from his back. He looked down. His veins were glowing, a pulsating green that churned beneath his skin like toxic fire. He didn't know what he was becoming, but as the pain faded and the power settled, he pushed forward, catching up with Mr. Clown step by step. Something had changed, and he was unsure what was yet to come, his veins slowly pulsating with crescendoing energy. Meanwhile, the Stevens residence. "Come on, come on," Ethan growled in the darkness of his room, his fingers mashing every button on his controller with frantic intensity. He leaned forward, sweat beading on his brow. This was it. Competition day. Nothing mattered more. "I see a bogey. 12 o'clock, Jacob shouted. "Open fire," Aidan yelled. "Negative. Hold position," Ethan commanded. "Every move counts." The two flanked him, their eyes locked on the screen. They took a sharp right toward a hill. "High ground. Get ready." When they open that supply drop, they're sitting ducks. The trio crouched silently, ready to pounce. "Get ready," Ethan whispered, adjusting his sunglasses for dramatic effect. "Ethan!" Karen's voice echoed from downstairs. "Shut up, Mom. This is fucking important." And then, bang, a sniper round. Then another. All three were taken out in one shot. Game over. "Are you kidding me?" Ethan whined, restraining every muscle in his body from crashing out and breaking his TV again. Just then, Harold burst into the room without knocking, stepping right in front of the dreaded return to lobby screen. "Get out!" Ethan grumbled in defeat, holding back from shouting at him. "Oh, okay." Harold sulked and trudged back down the stairs where Karen rushed around the kitchen. "What's going on, Mommy?" he asked. "Oh, hey, honey, I have a date," she said, trying to keep her nerves in check. "Can you tell Ethan I'll be out for a few hours?" "Okay, Mommy. Have fun." Karen exhaled deeply. 15 years. 15 years since she let herself try again. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but there was a knock at the door before she could second-guess. She opened it, and there he was. "Hey, Karen," Tim said, wearing a clean button-down and khakis. "Hey," she replied softly. "You look amazing," Tim said. "Oh, thank you," she said, blushing slightly. A comfortable silence settled between them. "You ready to go?" Tim asked. Karen nodded. They walked to his car together. As she slid into the passenger seat, her eyes widened. "When did you get this car?" she asked. "It's brand new. I thought I'd need a normal vehicle for things like this," said Tim as he adjusted the rearview mirror. I didn't know you were a Chevy guy. Karen chuckled. It's not really my style, but as soon as I saw the colours, the black model looked slick. Plus, I'm not always fighting crime in the city, so it's a nice change of pace. Anyway, let's get going, Tim said excitedly as he pulled out of the driveway and headed towards the restaurant. So, how's the kids? Tim asked. They've been a handful for sure, but they're better now, Karen said, trying to avoid the thoughts about her dead husband. That's good. I'm sure it's been hard for them since… Sorry, I don't mean to… It's okay, Tim, I know what you meant, said Karen as they parked beside the restaurant. The two of them sat down in their seats and started looking at their menus. Karen's eyes widened after looking at the prices. Tim, you didn't have to take us to a place this nice. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I know you like Italian. Well, I appreciate it, said Karen with a warm smile. As they chatted and ate, Karen felt something she hadn't in years. Safe. Gwendol never did this. Never took her somewhere nice. She caught herself smiling. Well, I'm stuffed, she said. Me too. The chicken piccata's always been my favourite. I don't even know why. There's so many things that don't make sense in my life, said Tim as he set his fork down. How's the therapy? Have you been able to remember anything? Karen asked. Not really. Ever since I woke up in that field in the suit, everything before that feels foggy. Although I feel like I know one thing. What's that? It's complicated, but I feel like deep down, I've always had an older brother, but I don't know, I just get these weird dreams of being a kid with this mystery family, but I can never see their faces. Karen's heart sank. Oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened to you. It's okay, at least I'm making new memories with someone I care about. They locked eyes, drifting closer, until Tim's phone buzzed. The spell broke. Sorry, I better take this, he answered, a panicked voice on the other end. I see. You've got to go? Karen asked. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's the mayor of Timtown. He said it was an emergency. It's okay, we were wrapping up things anyway, said Karen as they headed back to Karen's home. After dropping her off, Tim sped toward his facility to suit up and make his way to the Timothy Desert. Later, Tim continued down a long country road, feeling as if it stretched endlessly ahead. Something immediately felt wrong. Snow blanketed the desert, a place that hadn't seen snow in over 100 years. Tim pulled the scramjet up beside the main gate. As he stepped out, he scanned the eerily silent white landscape. Mayor Timbus waited near the gate, bundled in layers. Tim, I'm glad you're here. Quick, inside, before the storm hits, said Mayor Timbus as two guards escorted them to the centre of town. Tim glanced around the empty streets, every home shuttered tight. This place wasn't meant to sustain comfortability in such temperatures. What the hell is happening here? Tim asked. We don't know why it's snowing globally, but that's not the main issue here. I'm afraid it's much bigger than that, Timbus said grimly as they entered the central hall, just before a gust of wind slammed the door shut. As Tim got situated, he noticed that the other mayors were here too. Mayor Wallot of Virginity Village and Mayor Waxer of Triggerville. What's going on? Tim asked as Mayor Timbus lowered himself to his seat at the round table. Gym crimes have been on the rise dramatically. Countless kidnappings, robberies and even homicides have occurred in all three towns as of today, said Timbus as he casted a hologram of the map of the three towns. Why? Tim asked. Have you been watching the news lately? Mayor Waxer asked. No, I've been busy. Well, an advertisement just went live today from a tool company named Home Gympos. They broadcasted 2 murders of our own people whilst making a poor attempt to frame us. Oh shit, said Tim, shocked. Yeah, it sparked countless riots all across Timland. However, we think that was a sick excuse for the gyms to start their attack, said Mayor Wallot. What do you suppose we do? Tim asked. Suddenly, Sheriff Tim ambled inside the hall in his uniform. Hey y'all, sorry to interrupt, but we've got a dispatch team ready when you are, said the sheriff. All right, thank you, Sheriff, Timbus continued. As far as the towns as a whole, we're going to increase our defences and show the gyms we're not the ones to mess with. I don't want to start a war. We just need to stretch them thin. They're gyms. They'll give up eventually, said Mayor Timbus. What do you need me for? Tim asked. Nothing for now. We'll call you if something arises. It's Timmus Eve. I want you to enjoy yourself. This should be over by the following morning anyway. We're sending SWAT teams to search for the victims as well, said Timbus. Sorry to interrupt again, y'all, but there's a visitor outside, by the way. She said she knew Tim, the sheriff explained. Tim raised a brow. Huh, all right then. As Tim saluted the mayors and made his leave, he immediately noticed an older woman staring at him down the hallway. "Tim, is that you?" she asked. "Do you know her?" Sheriff Tim asked quietly. "I don't think so," Tim said peculiarly. The woman rushed forward and hugged him tightly. "Miss, what are you doing?" Tim asked angrily, pushing her away. "It's so good to hear your voice after all this time," she said. "Who the hell are you?" Tim demanded. "You don't remember?" Abigail asked, with a sorrowful expression. "You're all I have. Please." Tim glanced at the sheriff, confused, obviously uncomfortable. "Security, can you all take care of her?" said Sheriff Tim, as guards surrounded the woman while she sobbed. Tim watched in silence, unsettled, ultimately deciding to leave. Abigail shouted back, as guards dragged her away from Tim's sight. It seems she had finally gotten the closure she deserved. From the meeting room window, the mayors observed Tim's scramjet disappear into the snowy horizon. "I need to call my wife," Wallop muttered, as the mayors dispersed. Tim continued down the snowy road, many thoughts crossing his mind. With all of this going on, how could I just enjoy myself? It seems like they've got it taken care of, but what about the Tims being hurt right now? He thought to himself. And that crazy woman, why did she seem so familiar? Tim ignored his inner thoughts and decided he should stop by Karen's for a bit. He glanced at the gift box in his passenger seat, thinking that he would give it to her early. He pulled into Karen's driveway and stepped out, still in his suit. As he approached the door, he noticed it was cracked open. His heart sank. He pushed the door open slowly, only to drop Karen's gift in horror. The living room was wrecked, glass shattered, the TV broken, furniture overturned. No, he muttered, frantically checking every room. "Karen!" He eventually made it to the boys' rooms, scouring through everything. He burst into Harold's closet and found Harold and Ethan hiding. "What happened? Where's Karen?" Tim asked. "I think some Jims took her," Harold trembled. Tim suddenly spotted a note on the door. He ripped it off and read it. "Coordinates," he muttered. "They must be luring me in." "We're coming with you," Ethan said, stepping forward with Harold. "No, it's too dangerous. What if they come back?" Harold asked. "Yeah, they must know about us too," Ethan added. Tim hesitated. "Fine, I'll take you to my facility, but you stay there. No exceptions." The boys nodded. As they headed out, Ethan paused. "Wait, I need to get something," said Ethan, dashing back to his room to grab his Xbox and controller. Tim rolled his eyes but said nothing. The three of them hopped in the car, and Tim sped off into the distance, praying that Karen's life wasn't in danger. As Tim drove off, high above, a drone hovered silently tracking the vehicle. In a dark control room, a suited man grinned at the screen. Behind him, a guard entered. "Sir, is it time?" Clyde asked. Jim, the face of Home Gym Post, smirked. "Call the others." Alone again, Jim stared at the screen. "Let's show them who you really are, Tim," he whispered ominously. Somewhere in Los Angeles, the misfits wandered down the bustling streets of the city, searching every nook and cranny for their lost pickle. "Where is it? I feel like he should have come back already," said Ricky Rat, pulling a spyglass from deep within his bottomless fur and peering dramatically around. "Ugh, I want to play," groaned the orgasmic cow, his eyes glued to a group of kids skating gleefully down the sidewalk. "Let's give it 5 more minutes. He's probably somewhere around here." Ricky sighed. "Didn't you say bad things are going to happen, orgasmic cow?" Krampus asked, slightly worried. "I don't know, probably." "But I want to go play," he replied, watching the skaters with envy. Mr. Monkey agreed to the orgasmic cow's proposition with a few energetic hand gestures. "Okay, fine. We'll play for a little bit, then we'll look again," Ricky conceded. "Yay!" the orgasmic cow cheered as the misfits ran toward the skater kids. "Hey, I want that," the orgasmic cow said, shoving a poor kid off his skateboard and hopping on with zero remorse. "Hey, give it back," his friend shouted. "It's our turn, orange heads." Mr. Unicorn barked back as the misfits absconded with the skateboards, chaos in their wake. "Why are kids such assholes nowadays?" Ricky asked as they zipped down the sidewalks, clipping the occasional pedestrian. "Right?" Mr. Unicorn agreed as they weaved through traffic, now racing one another in a flurry of hooves, wheels, and minor casualties. "Hey, what were we doing again?" the orgasmic cow asked mid-trick. "I don't know," shrugged Krampus, just before slamming face-first into a street pole with a clang. The rest skidded to a halt. "Damn, you okay, Krampus?" Mr. Unicorn asked. "Oh yes, me's a fine," he assured them, confidently twisting his backwards head back into place like a bobblehead chiropractor. "Hey, pals," said a strikingly familiar voice from behind them. The misfits whipped around, jaws dropping. "What the fuck?" Ricky shrieked. "Fuck is right," said Rat Tim, hands on his hips like a resurrected menace. "Oh, my." Without hesitation, Ricky Rat pulled out a rocket launcher, because of course he had one, and obliterated Rat Tim on the spot. Phew, that was close. Wait, he died, right? How was he just there? The orgasmic cow asked, flailing in confusion. "I don't fucking know. Let's get out of here," Mr. Unicorn barked, but as they turned to flee, there he was again, Rat Tim, standing in front of them, very much not exploded. "Gah, what the hell?" Ricky screeched, half ready to launch another missile. "Whoa there, busters. Calm down. I can explain," Rat Tim said, hands raised like a guilty magician. "You better make it quick. We were in the middle of something, I think," the orgasmic cow muttered, crossing his ears with frustration. "How are you so alive?" Krampus asked, blinking sideways. "Well," Rat Tim began, "ever since I fell off that skyscraper for stalking someone too close, I just sorta get back up. Every time I die, I bounce right back. I don't know why. It's just a thing now. Anyway, not the point." He puffed up dramatically. "I'm here because I know who stole your pickle." The misfits gasped collectively. "How do you know about that?" Ricky narrowed his eyes. "Well, I was watching you guys from the bushes, like I always do, with my camera and binoculars, and I happened to catch two Jims sneaking in and taking it. Look!" Rat Tim whipped out his camera and pulled up the footage. "Oh, shit," Mr. Unicorn muttered as they all watched their sacred pickle get swiped on screen. "Okay, 1, why were you watching us? And 2, for how long?" Mr. Unicorn asked, horrified. Mr. Monkey arched a judgmental brow at Rat Tim, crossing his arms. "Probably better if he doesn't answer that," Ricky said. "It's Rat Tim for crying out loud. But why would some Jims steal our pickle?" "That makes no sense," the orgasmic cow pouted. "I dunno, but they're up to something. And I know where their headquarters is. They've probably got it there," Rat Tim said with a dramatic finger point. Ricky squinted suspiciously. "Why help us? What do you get out of this?" Rat Tim looked down, suddenly solemn. "I figured, since you guys are world famous and heroic and stuff, maybe you know a lot of people. I'm just looking for a friend. It gets lonely sometimes." "Well, maybe if you weren't such a pervert, you'd have friends," Mr. Unicorn fired back. Rat Tim scoffed, offended. "Fine. If you don't want my help, then I guess you'll never see that precious pickle again." He spun dramatically and started stomping off. "Wait. Just tell us how to get there," the orgasmic cow said in defeat, the weight of pickle loss too much to bear. "Why, of course. As long as you hold up your end of the deal," Rat Tim smirked, spinning on his heel. "Ugh, fine. We'll make an attempt at finding you a friend," Ricky muttered, regretting every life choice. "Oh my, thank you. Follow me. It's not too far." Rat Tim beamed as he skipped ahead. "Oh, nuts. It's getting late. We need to be off the streets soon," the orgasmic cow whispered nervously. "Why?" Ricky asked. "Haven't you heard the rumours?" Cow said ominously. "Some Tims say there's a guy who roams between 6 and 8 p.m, attacking anyone on the streets. He rides a bicycle so fast no one can see him. All they hear is the honk of his bicycle horn." "Are you talking about the peddler?" Mr. Unicorn whispered. The misfits all looked around, spooked. Suddenly, ring! The orgasmic cow's very real, definitely always there. Work phone buzzed in his pocket. Everyone jumped. "Misfits, where are you?" "It's getting late," Philomelf shouted from the speaker. "Oh, we're almost done. Just gotta get something real quick," the orgasmic cow replied, faking calm. "Please don't make us come find you again. This is important. See you soon." Hopefully, click. The misfits stood in silence. "You heard 'em. Let's go," Rat Tim shouted as he dashed ahead. The misfits groaned and followed him through the snowfall, their breath puffing like cartoon clouds. But behind them, someone watched. From the shadows of an alley, a figure emerged. A horse, upright, regal, with purpose. He touched his earpiece. "Sir, the misfits are on their way. Begin phase 2, said the horse, who walks into a bar. He chuckled darkly, revealing glistening teeth. "Soon enough, you're going to be the ones with the long faces." And with that villainous zinger, he vanished back into the shadows. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Arctic tundra, "Here we are," Mr. Clown announced as he creaked open the door to a crooked, frost-bitten shack nestled at the edge of the tundra. "What the hell is this?" Timothy scoffed, stepping inside. The place was barren, just a dusty shelf, a cracked window, and the faint stench of burnt sugar. "There's hardly anything in here." "Oh, just wait, my friend," Mr. Clown said with a sly grin, tugging on a rusted lever camouflaged beside the shelf. With a mechanical groan, the entire wall rotated to reveal a hidden stairwell descending into darkness. "You're not my friend," Timothy muttered, but he followed him down nonetheless. The stairs led to a sprawling underground lab, dimly lit, cluttered, alive with whirring machines and the faint glow of bubbling chemicals. Tables overflowed with flasks, power coils sparked in the corners, and viscous fluids pulsed through membranous filters like artificial arteries. "Welcome to my lab. Or someone's lab. I found it years ago, abandoned. Guess no one's coming back for it." Mr. Clown flipped a switch, and the room buzzed to life. Timothy scanned the room. "You're quite the alchemist, huh?" "You could say that," Mr. Clown replied, strapping several glowing vials to his belt. "What are those for? Let's just say, festive fireworks, with bite." He chuckled darkly as he stuffed more potions into a sack. "Ah, I almost forgot. I made something for you." Timothy raised a brow. "Did you now?" Mr. Clown led him to the back of the lab, unveiling a set of sleek black armour. Tactical, jagged, reinforced with obsidian plating. Alongside it were two mechanical claw gauntlets, fitted with retractable blades and humming with energy. "I could get used to this," Timothy said with a smirk as he slipped on the gear. He flexed his fingers, testing the claws as they extended with a satisfying shink. "Looks like the Krampus has finally returned," Mr. Clown said proudly, placing a blood-stained Santa hat on his own head. "And with the rise of carny claws, this holiday season's about to get delightfully cursed." "Let's get to it then," Timothy growled. As Mr. Clown led the way up the stairs, Timothy silently pocketed several vials from the table, his eyes gleaming with malice. The two monsters trudged through the snow, shadows stretching long behind them as the sun dipped below the horizon. The winds howled louder, biting through the air like blades. "So much snow this year," Carny Claws muttered, peering up at the churning sky. "Feels fitting. It's almost unnatural. Even for the North Pole," Timothy added, narrowing his eyes. "How much further? Have you already forgotten?" Timothy sneered. "There, look!" He pointed toward a plume of smoke curling above the horizon. The two climbed a hill and stood side by side, gazing down at the glowing silhouette of the workshop in the distance. "There it is," Carny Claws said, almost reverently, but Timothy's eyes burned with something far from awe. He clenched his claws, hatred bubbling in his veins. "Let's give the misfits a proper holiday welcome," he spat. Carny Claws nodded, and they began their descent. But then, halfway down the hill, Timothy staggered. A sharp pain lanced through his skull, like molten needles burrowing into bone. He dropped to one knee, groaning as he gripped his head. Carny Claws turned. "You all right?" Timothy took a breath, masking the agony behind a sly grin. Never better. Unseen by his companion, two jagged horns had begun pushing through the flesh of his scalp, black and glistening. His muscles tightened, his senses sharpened. Something other was awakening inside him. "All right then," Carny Claws said warily, turning back toward the workshop. Timothy rose to his feet, slipping the stolen vials deeper into his cloak, his grin spreading like a crack in glass. He followed behind, eyes locked on his so-called partner with venomous intent. The doors of the workshop creaked open as the two villains stepped inside, the elves completely unaware of what was about to happen. Somewhere underground Los Angeles. After minutes of blistering speed through the outskirts of Los Angeles, Tim's scramjet screeched to a halt atop a forgotten concrete platform nestled among coastal trees. Fog rolled off the Pacific in the distance. Tim jumped out, keyed a code into a worn control panel. The ground rumbled. The slab beneath the car groaned and began to sink, slowly lowering them into darkness. A cavernous underground bunker emerged around them, dimly lit and sterile. Ethan and Harold stared wide-eyed, their silence betraying awe. "This is your facility?" Ethan asked. "Yes," Tim said briskly. "Stay here. I need to gear up." He darted to a sleek gun locker and snapped it open with practiced urgency. A silenced pistol clipped onto his belt. Flash grenades, smokes, stuns and remote charges, he packed them with precision. Every second mattered. "Tim, we can still help," Ethan offered, stepping forward. Tim ignored him, tossing supplies into the scramjet. "I don't have time for this," he muttered. "I'm not putting anyone else in danger." He cursed under his breath. "Damn it! I need more ammo." As Tim rushed off, Ethan and Harold glanced at one another with determination, knowing that they needed to do something to help. As he jogged back to the locker, he caught a flicker of movement. He turned, empty. The brothers were gone. He sighed. Tim climbed back into the scramjet. The platform began its ascent. No time to chase them. He blasted back into the snowy streets. The city swallowed by a blizzard so thick even his advanced visors struggled to cut through the whiteout. Tim adjusted his visors in hopes that the plummeting snow would deteriorate. However, it only seemed as if it would get worse. As Tim got closer to the headquarters, he noticed what seemed to be fire in the distance. Tim slowed, spotting a car flipped and engulfed in fire. "Oh my God," he whispered. No driver, no signs of life. Then, honk, honk. He froze, glancing into his rear view. A cyclist. Not just any cyclist. What the hell? Suddenly bullets shredded toward him from machine guns mounted to the sides. "He's real!" Ethan's voice burst from the trunk. Tim jolted. "Ethan? Harold? What the fuck are you guys doing in my car?" The scramjet veered wildly under fire as Tim yanked the wheel and gunned the boosters. Bullets whizzed past. Tim whipped out his pistol and fired back. How the hell is he that fast? The cyclist, peddler, closed in, dodging bullets like a phantom. "Hold on!" Tim shouted, activating full boosters. The roar from the engine blasted the peddler back. For a moment, a massive cabbage rolled in from the side, slamming into the scramjet. "There's two of them!" Tim screamed, unloading rounds at the vegetable on wheels. "Tim, 9 o'clock!" Ethan shouted. The peddler was back, flanking from the left. Tim gritted his teeth. "All right, they've left me no choice." He slammed the brakes. The scramjet skidded in reverse. Tim flicked open a compartment. Missiles primed. He fired. A deafening explosion shattered the cabbage to pieces. The blast sent the peddler careening off balance. Tim didn't wait. Boosters engaged. He left them both in the snowstorm's veil. Behind him, the peddler drove his powerful leg into the pavement in frustration. Beside him, the cabbage slowly reformed, humanoid limbs unfolding from leafy wreckage. "Sir," Gerald the cabbage said, eyes burning red. "Tim is approaching. Get ready." Tim swerved through the final turns, brakes screeching as he pulled up to a towering skyscraper. "When this is over, you kids are in big trouble," said Tim coldly. Once stepping out of the car, he examined the building ahead. "Maze Bank," he muttered. "Should have known." Ethan and Harold tumbled out of the trunk, still dizzy. Tim loaded up. No turning back now. "Follow my lead," he said. "I'll protect you." "Will do," Harold said, chewing a chocolate bar he somehow still had. They approached a side door. Tim kicked it open. Darkness. Power offline. Suddenly, gunfire erupted. Tim tackled the brothers behind a desk, flipping it for cover. Bullets shredded overhead. 10 gym guards flooded from the elevator, rifles scanning the shadows as Tim flanked away from cover. "Where'd he go?" one whispered. "Pop!" One dropped, a bullet through the skull. Tim ghosted through the shadows, striking with precision. One by one, the guards fell. The flash of gunfire lit the room like lightning. Down to 3, one limping. Tim tossed a grenade, vaulted the desk. Before they had time to react, boom! The guards were killed instantly, sending shrapnel everywhere. "You guys okay?" he asked. The boys nodded, shaken. "I'll be back," he said as he checked for clearance and headed towards the elevator. He stepped inside with haste, immediately noticing a camera above watched him. He stared back, cold, ruthless. Tim shot the camera down. Miles away, Jim leaned forward in his chair, watching the blank screen. "Well, this should be fun," he chuckled. Tim ascended through the elevator, each floor ticking by with agonizing patience. Only 20 more to go. The soft hum of machinery filled the cramped metal box as the lights blinked overhead. His heartbeat pulsed louder than the lift's quiet whirring, keeping tempo with his rising anticipation. He wasn't sure what waited above, but he could feel it watching, like a breath held too long. Then, without warning, the elevator lurched and jolted to a halt. 27th floor. A sick sensation crawled up Tim's spine. He knew what that meant. They were expecting him. The doors clicked. Tim's eyes shot up. A maintenance duct gaped open just above him. He didn't hesitate. He leapt. fingers scraping the sides as he pulled himself up and into the cramped crawlspace just as the doors began to part below. Boots thundered in, a chorus of voices barked beneath him. "Where is he?" "Up there," one shouted. "Ah, shit," Tim cursed under his breath. His arms ached as he climbed the elevator shaft's inner cable, metal biting at his gloves. Below, the guards began to climb after him, heavy gear clanking against steel as they ascended. He had seconds. His hand found the small remote explosive on his belt. With a flick, he planted it on the cable just beneath his feet and pressed the detonator. The explosion shook the shaft with a sharp thunderclap, and the world lurched beneath him. The cable snapped. The elevator and the screaming guards plummeted into darkness. Tim clung to what remained of the upper tether, boots scraping against the wall. Below, sparks erupted and echoed as the wreckage crashed into the ground, but the floor's security gates were already beginning to close. He slid down the ruined cable and swung forward with every ounce of momentum he had. At the last second, he dove, rolling through the narrowing gap just before it sealed shut behind him. His lungs burned, his arms ached. He had no time to rest. A piercing alarm split the silence. It was deafening. And then footsteps, dozens of them. He could hear shouting, the familiar chaos of trained soldiers preparing for blood. Jim's. He ducked behind a steel support column, panting. His pistol trembled slightly in his grip as the sound grew closer. He waited until the voices aligned, until he could hear the rhythm of their boots like a metronome. Then he moved. He spun out from cover and fired, each shot echoing like thunder. But it was useless. The Jims were ready, clad in thick armoured plating and reinforced shields. His bullets pinged off like hail on stone. Panic surged. They had sidearms, sure, but they didn't need them. Their size, their shields, their brute force. They were the weapons. One charged, then another, then the rest. Tim reached for another explosive, but the guards were too fast. They overwhelmed him, battering him with their shields until he was surrounded. He fought wildly, landing a clean shot through one visor. Blood sprayed across the wall, but another struck him from behind, sending his pistol skittering across the floor. He collapsed, dazed. Boots encircled him, weapons raised, but they didn't shoot. They must want him alive. "You're coming with us, scum," one growled, a smirk twisting behind his visor. Tim blinked through the sweat and blood. Then his eyes landed on something, a hammer looped on one of their belts. It glinted, grimy and brutal. He didn't think. He moved. In one desperate burst, he lunged, grabbing the weapon and swinging it downward with everything he had. The hammer collided with the guard's kneecap. A sickening crunch followed. The Jim howled in pain and collapsed. Tim scrambled free, breathing raggedly. The hammer was heavy in his hands, too heavy, but it felt right. Tim glanced down at the bloody hammer in his hands, suddenly feeling an outside connection to it. The weight of it grounded him. The other Jims stared. Something changed in their stance. The confidence drained from their posture. They looked afraid. Tim stood tall, hammer clenched. His voice was low, nearly a whisper. "This is for Karen." Then he charged. The Jims opened fire, but Tim ducked and weaved, a ghost between the gunfire. He closed the distance and struck. Armor crumpled beneath the hammers. Weight like paper. Blood sprayed across his face. He didn't stop. Another swing. Another skull shattered. One Jim screamed, tried to run, but Tim was already on him, swinging with such force that the man's body flew into the wall and crumpled. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. One Jim rushed him in a frenzy, but Tim sidestepped, and the man barreled into his own comrade, both collapsing in a heap. Tim pulled a smoke grenade from his belt, dropped it, and let the chaos grow. The corridor filled with choking mist. The guards panicked, waving their weapons blindly. But Tim's visor cut through the haze. He became a shadow in the fog, appearing only long enough to maim or kill. One by one, they fell. One panicked and shoved the other toward Tim in desperation before sprinting into the stairwell. The last guard, abandoned, trembling, lifted his hands in surrender. Tim stalked forward. Through the visor, the guard saw his own fear reflected back. He flipped the hammer in his grip, revealing the jagged, rusted claw. "No, please!" the Jim pleaded, tears trickling from his eyes. The hammer tore through his throat. He collapsed, choking, blood gurgling in his lungs as he twitched and gasped on the floor as Tim left him there to die. Tim continued to the stairwell, following the trail of blood. At the top, he found the guard slumped against the railing, crying. "Please," the Jim sobbed. "I didn't want to do this." Tim stared at him. For a brief moment, the rage receded and guilt flickered. With a growl, he seized the man by the throat and hurled him over the edge. The scream cut through the stairwell, ending in a dull, echoing crack. Silence returned at last. Tim inhaled, steadying himself, knowing that he had a few more floors to go. He climbed the rest of the way, one exhausted step at a time. His legs burned, his lungs ached, his grip on the hammer had gone numb. At last, he reached the top floor. A narrow corridor stretched before him, leading to 2 tall steel doors. He didn't hesitate. He kicked them open and stopped. The room was empty. Monitors lined the walls, casting a pale blue glow across rows of consoles and wires. Surveillance footage blinked across the screens, hallways, stairwells, cells. But Karen was nowhere in sight. "Karen!" he shouted, voice raw and broken. It echoed back at him, unanswered. Suddenly, the main screen flickered, and a masked figure appeared. "Well, well," the man said. "You made it." Tim's fists clenched. "Where is she?" The man ignored him. "Looking for your precious mistress? How sweet." "Shut the hell up. Maybe you should be asking where her kids are, too." Tim froze. His stomach turned. "No, you should head back to the ground floor," the man said, a smile in his voice. "They're all waiting for you." The screen went dark. Tim stood there, drenched in sweat, his hammer dripping blood onto the floor. He didn't know if the man was lying, but he couldn't take the risk. "God damn it!" Tim snarled under his breath and sprinted back down the corridor, praying he wasn't already too late. Tim finally staggered to the bottom of the stairs, his breath ragged, sweat cascading down his face. His once pristine suit clung to his body, drenched in fluids, stained by blood, oil, and anguish. The ground floor greeted him with a grim tableau. The bodies of fallen guards lay twisted and broken in the dim light, but Karen and the kids were nowhere in sight. His eyes scanned the room desperately, until the front doors burst open. A group of 6 figures rushed into the building. Tim instinctively raised his weapon, heart pounding, ready for another fight. But when his eyes focused on their faces, he froze. "Misfits, what are you guys doing here?" he asked, confused. "Tim, are you okay?" Ricky Rat called, hurrying over with the others in tow. "I'm fine," Tim panted, voice trembling, but they took Karen and the kids. "Uh-oh, guys, the gyms are really up to something," the orgasmic cow said nervously. "Hey, guys, what's this?" Rat Tim asked, pointing at an out-of-place red button on the wall. "Should we suppress it?" Crocus asked curiously. "What if it's a secret entrance?" Mr. Unicorn suggested. Without hesitation, Rat Tim jumped up to reach it, being short and spry, and slammed his palm into the button. With a mechanical hiss, a concealed flush door opened beside them, revealing a narrow stairway descending into darkness. "Everyone stay behind me," Tim ordered, taking point as he headed down, his weapon drawn. The misfits followed closely, moving cautiously, motivated not only by duty but by a strange, gnawing sense of dread. They descended into near-total blackness, swallowed by the shadows of the hidden basement. The air was thick, humid, and tinged with a sickly sweet rot. "Karen!" Tim called out softly, his voice echoing eerily as he cocked his pistol. Suddenly, Rat Tim darted ahead, disappearing into the gloom. "Rat Tim, where'd you go?" Mr. Unicorn called out, but there was no answer, only faint giggles and the unsettling patter of footsteps circling around them. "Guys, what's happening?" The orgasmic cow whimpered. Tim's grip tightened on his weapon. Shadows flickered in every direction. The group instinctively clustered together, the air prickling with the sense of something terribly wrong. "We're not alone down here," Tim muttered. Just then the lights snapped on, flickering to life in a sharp buzz, and the full horror of the room unfolded before them. They stood in what looked like a laboratory, sterile, metallic, horrifying. Rows of towering test tubes lined both walls, each one bubbling with a green, viscous liquid. Floating inside were mice, dozens of them, connected to tubes, kept alive, unnaturally. "What the actual fuck?" Ricky Rat shouted, reeling back. "It's Rat Tim. They're all Rat Tims." Mr. Unicorn cried in shock, pointing at the tubes. But before they could make sense of it, a low, rasping voice rolled out from behind them, gravelly and damp, like death gargling through broken glass. "Oh my!" They spun around. Out of the shadows stepped a grotesque figure, a humanoid nightmare, part man, part rodent. Its flesh was a mismatched patchwork of greasy fur and dry, cracked human skin. Its limbs were misshapen, twitching. Its bloodshot eyes gleamed with malice. A grotesque tail swayed lazily behind it, and its grin stretched impossibly wide. "What is that?" the orgasmic cow screamed. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Rat Tim. Nice to finally meet you all," he rasped, his voice like a dying windpipe trying to whisper. "What the hell?" Crocus gasped. Footsteps thundered behind them, more figures emerging from the stairwell. Mr. Unicorn's eyes went wide with horror. "It's the horse we saw 2 years ago," he cried. Gerald the cabbage, the peddler, and the horse who walks into the bar stepped into view, dragging Karen and the children with them. Tape sealed their mouths. Behind them, more guards stormed in, dragging the 3 town mayors down the stairs. "Karen! Mayors!" Tim yelled, only to be instantly surrounded by gym guards with AR-15s trained on him. Then, a man in a red and black tuxedo descended the stairs slowly, deliberately. His suit mirrored Tim's own, except darker, meaner, a cruel parody. He removed his visor. "Hello, Brother Jim," the face of Home Jimpos said, voice steeped in venom. "What?" Tim responded in disbelief as the guards closed in. "Listen here, misfits. The Jims and I have made a deal," Rat Tim announced, producing something behind his back. "It was the pickle. It was you," the orgasmic cow shouted in fury. "That's right. Remember when I said I always wanted a friend?" Rat Tim crooned, cradling the pickle with affection. "Tim seems to be quite the fit for me. And what better way to lure him here than to kidnap the people he loves?" "You're fucking sick," Tim yelled, his voice raw. "I'm not finished," Rat Tim snapped. "To make myself useful to the Jims, I offered them something, loyalty. They want full control of the world, and honestly, we aren't so different. Both outcasts. Judged, wronged. I saw potential in an alliance. Look at yourselves. You're the animals, abusing your gifts for selfish gain. Now it's our time to rise. What do you want with our pickle?" the orgasmic cow demanded. Jim stepped forward, gaze ice cold. "Lead us to the workshop and we'll give it back. It's that simple. As for you, brother, we have other plans." Tim struggled as the guards pinned him to the floor. "Tim!" Karen tried to scream through the tape, but Gerald the cabbage silenced her with a vicious strike. "Pull up the video," Jim ordered. The horse who walks into the bar flipped on a monitor. Grainy footage flickered onto the screen, surveillance from the streets of Los Angeles. A man in orange and grey, headphones on, ruthlessly beat innocent people with a hammer. The face was unmistakable. It was Tim. The screen shifted to photos of a smiling family. 2 children, eerily resembling the one standing beside Karen. Then home footage, a living room. 2 bodies, blood. Tim's heart plummeted. He recognized the faces. His parents. "You did this," Jim growled. "We were a happy family, and you tore it all apart." Karen began to weep silently, horror etched across her face. "No, this can't be right. Why can't I remember?" Tim screamed, clutching his head. "You're a murderer, a freak. You don't deserve life," Jim shouted, hatred flooding his voice. Tim trembled, on the edge of collapse. The misfits were paralyzed, unsure, afraid. "Now, take us to the workshop, or your precious pickle will be split in 2, Rat Tim threatened, beginning to twist it cruelly. "Stop. We'll show you. Just stop this," the orgasmic cow begged, his eyes welling with milk tears. Jim smirked. "Let's go. And bring the mayors. I want them to see me take their power. As for you, brother, enjoy your new friend." He snatched the pickle from Rat Tim and ascended the stairs with a group of guards. The misfits followed without a word. Karen, the children, they didn't even look back. "Misfits, you can't leave me here," Tim pleaded, but no one answered. "No," he whispered, clenching his fists in despair. Rat Tim stepped forward, licking his lips. "Don't worry, it'll all be over soon," Karen and the kids whimpered. "What are you?" Tim asked, barely able to speak. "I used to be just like you know, but I was a filthy one. Couldn't keep my hands to myself. And then, one day, a bright light, a flash from the skies beamed down on me. I was beside a mouse, for no particular reason, and when I woke up, I was this." He gestured to his twisted form. "I found I could talk to mice, control them, and I used them to hide, to watch, to wait. For a friend." He stepped closer, grotesquely affectionate. "What do you want with me?" Tim asked, recoiling. "I've been so lonely," Rat Tim whispered, sliding his hands onto Tim's shoulders. His breath reeked of rot. "Do you know how long it's been since I've touched another human?" Karen began working at her ropes behind him. "I'm going to enjoy this," Rat Tim hissed, moving in closer. Suddenly, crack! Karen smashed something into the back of his head. Rat Tim stumbled with a screech. "Run!" she screamed. Tim grabbed the kids and bolted up the stairs. "Gah!" Rat Tim snarled, lurching after them. "Why did you save me?" Tim shouted. "We can talk later. Can you drive?" "Yes, get in the car." They piled into the scramjet. Tim punched the ignition. "Prepare the fleet." Rat Tim growled, his voice now void of mercy. The Misfits' workshop, 1 hour, till Timmer's. The Misfits and the 3 mayors stepped out of a sleek, futuristic aircraft onto the snow-covered field beside the workshop. The cold air bit at their skin, the snowfall thickening as silence fell across the white expanse. "Ah, here we are," Jim muttered, adjusting his red visor as he gazed upon the enchanted building ahead. "Can we please have our pickle back now?" the orgasmic cow asked, his voice tight with frustration. Jim smirked. "Go fetch," he said, tossing the pickle casually into the snow. Mr. Monkey darted forward, scooping it up and clutching it tightly, relief washing over his face. Behind them, an army of gym guards descended from the aircraft in perfect formation, their weapons still trained on the Misfits. "I've been waiting for this moment since I was a child," Jim said, smiling as he stared at the massive, glowing structure. The 3 mayors exchanged uneasy glances. Timbers sighed heavily. "We no longer have a choice," he murmured to Wallot and Waxer. "Don't do this, Timbers," Waxer replied, his voice low. "There's no going back." Timbers didn't respond. He simply stared ahead, watching as Jim strode confidently toward the colossal workshop doors. "Declare war," he said flatly. Waxer's eyes widened. "You know what that means?" "He's right," Wallot said solemnly. "Reinforcements are already on the way." Waxer nodded, reluctant but resigned. Timbers reached discreetly into his pocket and pressed a hidden remote. "It's done," he whispered. "Every other world will receive the message soon enough." Meanwhile, Jim neared the towering red doors. "Almost there," he breathed. But before he could take another step, sirens erupted in the distance. Everyone turned. Jim's smile vanished. Flashing lights lit up the snowy horizon as a convoy of cop cars skidded to a halt in the clearing. Behind them came armoured vehicles emblazoned with the insignia of the Tim military. Sheriff Tim and Uncle Louie stepped out of the frontmost vehicle. "Stand down!" Sheriff Tim bellowed across the frozen field. "We have you! Surrounded!" Snow continued to pour from the sky, muffling the tension but not the rage. Jim clenched his jaw. "So be it," he growled under his breath. "Jims, prepare your weapons," he shouted. The guards raised their rifles, lasers trained on the lawmen and soldiers. But just as the first shot was about to be fired, boom! A violent explosion ripped through the air. The entire field erupted in chaos. Snow, fire, and debris exploded outward as a shockwave slammed everyone to the ground. Ears rang. Vision blurred. Screams echoed. The orgasmic cow clutched his head, staggering on one knee, blinking through the smoke and flame. His senses failed him, but slowly he focused. Ahead, the workshop was gone. Nothing remained but a towering inferno. Flaming wreckage. The magical building, obliterated. The pickle, shattered in pieces, lay smoking in the snow. Screams rang out as terrified elves scattered in all directions, fleeing the devastation. The Misfits helped the orgasmic cow to his feet. Together, they stared into the blaze, too stunned to speak. Then, as the smoke thinned, their eyes locked onto something emerging from the fire. A figure. Thin, tall, skin charred black, long claws, curved horns twisting from its head. Their blood ran cold. It couldn't be. The misfits stood frozen, eyes locked on the towering wall of flame as Timothy Krampus, emerged from the blaze. His cloak smouldered and disintegrated, ember by ember, until it crumbled away completely. He stepped onto the snow, steam hissing from his boots, but his body was untouched by the fire, unscathed by the heat. "Merry Timmers, bitches!" Timothy Krampus rasped, his voice high-pitched, jagged, and laced with venom. The orgasmic cow staggered back a step, his jaw slack. What? How is he? "Thanks to a deceased, naive clown who perfected the horn pickle serum," Timothy bellowed, his eyes glowing violently with the serum's corrupt energy, "I now have one final chance to kill you, orgasmic cow." The field went silent. Tim's and Jim's alike stood in stunned disbelief, eyes wide as they beheld the reborn villain, the monster of Timmer's past, alive and radiating unnatural power. Jim, ever the opportunist, seized the moment of confusion. "Fire!" he shouted. A hailstorm of bullets erupted as Jim's guards unleashed a full-scale assault on the Tim forces. "Charge!" Uncle Louis roared as the military vehicles revved and lunged forward into the fray. Gunfire cracked, magic flared. Snow churned into mist under tank treads and heavy boots. The storm above intensified, wind howling with a madness that mirrored the battlefield below. Timothy Krampus grinned, his teeth jagged and yellow as the chaos unfolded around him. "Pure chaos," he hissed. "Just how I like it." He began advancing through the storm and fire, heading directly for the orgasmic cow. From the distance, a voice rang out. "Misfits!" shouted Phylum Elf, sprinting through the smoke, a stolen glowing globe clutched in his hands. Behind him came Haxon, Curtis, Seppo, Louis, and Elf Tim, weapons ready. Phylum raised the magical globe, its runes pulsing with blue light. A beam of pure energy burst forth, slamming into Krampus's chest. The blast knocked him back several steps, smoke sizzling from his torso, but he didn't fall. It was enough. The misfits and the elves took the opportunity to regroup, forming ranks between the burning wreckage and the advancing Krampus. Timothy shook his head violently, snapping back to focus with a guttural snarl. "You'll always have to steal something that isn't yours. You elves just don't die, do ya?" he sneered, his clawed hands twitching with bloodlust. Phylum Elf gripped Timothy's magical globe that previously saved them from the explosion. "Don't worry, you'll burn just like the rest of your kind." Phylum's fists clenched as he stared at the ruins of the workshop, at everything they'd lost. And then, "Attack!" Phylum roared. The misfits and the remaining elves charged toward the flame, weapons drawn, hearts pounding. Timothy Krampus opened his arms wide in welcome, grinning like a madman, waiting, eager for them to make the first move. Meanwhile, Los Angeles, Tim and the Stevens family sped away from May's Bank Tower in a scramjet, wind whipping violently against the windows as snow and debris blurred the road ahead. "It's not safe to drive anymore," Tim shouted, gripping the wheel as the vehicle swerved against the force of the storm. "We don't have a choice," Karen shot back, clutching her trembling children close. "I want to play Fortnite," Ethan wailed in frustration, hugging his Xbox like it could save him. "Now's not the time, Ethan," Karen snapped. Suddenly, Tim slammed the brakes. The scramjet screeched to a halt, jolting everyone forward. "What's going on?" Karen asked, her voice tight with concern. They all looked ahead. A wall of fire raged across the street. Thick smoke poured into the air. Somewhere beyond the blaze, a siren wailed faintly, its volume slowly rising. Then, boom! A colossal explosion echoed across the city, sending a shockwave that rattled the scramjet violently. "Shit. We need to get out of here," Tim muttered, eyes scanning the fiery skyline. "I'm taking you all to the facility." "What about the misfits? They might be in danger." Harold cried. "They're all the way in the North Pole. We'll never make it in time," Tim snapped, as the storm grew stronger, visibility all but gone. Before they could take off again, a massive aircraft descended beside them, blasting snow in all directions as it landed with precision. The hatch opened. A man in a sleek blue power suit, pulsing with orange energy, jumped out and sprinted toward them. "Tim Possible! Get in! Now!" the man shouted with a commanding presence. Out of options, the family didn't hesitate. They abandoned the scramjet and rushed aboard the futuristic starship. The doors sealed behind them, and within seconds they were airborne, soaring into the chaotic night sky. Tim looked out through the front windshield. Below them, his city, his home, was in ruins. Buildings burned, streets were flooded, the skyline was gone. What the hell is going on? And how do you know me? Tim demanded. We don't know exactly, said a new voice. 4 more individuals in matching suits stepped into the cockpit, each carrying the weight of experience in their eyes. But when the world's falling apart, we suit up. That's always been the rule, one of them said. We saw you from above and figured we could use another hero, added another. We've seen the good you've done. You're a fighter. Who are you people? Tim asked. We used to call ourselves the Supernaturals, said the leader, Doug, with quiet pride. Did you ever meet a man named Kyle? The Stevens family exchanged confused glances, blank stares. Never mind, Doug said, brushing it off. The point is, something massive is going down. We've stopped the end before. We'll do it again. We need to find the Misfits, Tim said suddenly, his voice cold and distant. The Misfits? Where are they? Asked Bradley, one of the suited men. You know them? Karen interjected. We fought together before, Doug replied. Weird as hell, but powerful. If they're still alive, they might tip the scale. Where? The North Pole, Tim answered. Doug turned to the controls. Hang tight. This won't take long. The ship veered sharply, bursting through the clouds like a meteor. The world beneath them curved into view as the craft pushed beyond conventional speed. Then, footsteps. A young woman, Emily, stepped into the cockpit, a small child clutching her hand. Doug, 50% of the world's major cities have been decimated, she said quietly. The child glanced out the viewport, fear etched across their face. Doug clenched his fists, his face grim. Fuck, this is bad. Oh, Ethan groaned, arms folded. I hope this is fixed by tomorrow so I can still get my Winterfest presents in fortnight. Karen spun around, eyes burning. Are you fucking serious right now? That's what you're worried about? It's always fortnight this, fortnight that. Get a fucking grip, Ethan. Ethan froze. His face fell as he looked down, lost in thought. His mind wandered to his friends. Aidan, Jacob. Were they okay? Were they still out there? The ship grew quiet. The weight of everything pressed down like gravity. It felt like they were the last people alive. We're almost there, Doug said suddenly, breaking the silence. Tim leaned forward, jaw clenched, heart pounding. His thoughts were spinning. Jim, the betrayal, the chaos, the war, the secrets. Guilt clawed at him like a parasite, whispering that this was all his fault. But guilt wouldn't save the world. Violence would. He took a breath and let go of everything but the rage. The North Pole, 30 minutes till Timus. A violent battle erupted across the North Pole, raging amidst the shattered ruins of the once joyful workshop. Blood tainted the snow beneath the boots of Tim and Jim's soldiers as the elves and the misfits charged head-on toward Timothy Krampus, their roars swallowed by the thunder of war. Explosions thundered to either side as the orgasmic cow clashed with his monstrous rival, his hoof pounding through fire and ash. Timothy snarled and dug his claws into the orgasmic cow's fur, hurling him backward with raw force, right into Ricky Rat, who tumbled with a cry. Before Timothy could press the advantage, Krampus launched himself into the air, landing a sharp kick that forced Timothy to stagger slightly. Mr. Unicorn and Mr. Monkey flanked from the right, each landing heavy blows, their attacks fueled by desperation. Ricky and the orgasmic cow quickly scrambled to their feet, shaking off the pain. Together with the others, they unleashed a coordinated assault, striking from all angles, a blur of fists, kicks, and fury. Timothy only grinned. He could feel the energy coursing through him, an intoxicating power that made their efforts feel like little more than gusts of wind. Enough of this, he bellowed, slashing through Ricky's side with his claws. Gah! Ricky screamed, collapsing to one knee as blood matted his fur. Ricky! Krampus roared, his rage exploding like a wildfire. He charged, only to be thrown back by a nearby blast that tore through the battlefield. The orgasmic cow rushed to Ricky's side, helping him up. The 5 misfits regrouped, breathing heavily, battered but unbroken. We need to work together. He's too strong, Mr. Unicorn shouted, glancing around at the crumbling war zone. Timothy rolled his neck, cracking it with a satisfied smile. Are you guys going to fight me or just talk about it? He taunted, sarcasm dripping from every word. With a silent nod between them, the misfits charged once more, their unity now their greatest weapon. Nearby, Sheriff Tim fired wildly at the approaching horde, ducking behind twisted metal as chaos engulfed the sky. There's too many of them, he shouted, watching as Jim's called for backup. Above, the night sky blazed with starships, orange and red blasts streaking through the air like falling stars. From across the battlefield, a voice rang out. "Sheriff!" yelled Chicago Guy, sprinting through the snow with Tyrone close behind. "We got here as fast as we could. Jim's ambushed us on the way in. You're here now. That's what counts," Sheriff Tim said, panting. "We're launching our own fleet, but we need more time. We need a distraction," muttered Uncle Louis, eyes darting across the battlefield, mind racing for a plan. "Ah, shit! They're pushing ahead, sir!" Tyrone shouted as the four of them crouched behind the battered cop car, peeking over the hood. Through the swirling snow and smoke, Jim marched forward in his crimson tuxedo, followed by a legion of soldiers, all armed and ready to fire. "We have to fight. There's no other way out," said Sheriff Tim, locking and loading his infantry rifle. The group braced themselves alongside the scrambling dispatch team. But then the ground trembled. With a thunderous hiss, a starship touched down beside them, its metallic hull glinting in the dim light. The ramp lowered. Strange silhouettes emerged. "Who the hell are they?" asked Chicago Guy, eyes narrowing. Sheriff Tim squinted. His expression shifted from confusion to stunned disbelief. "It can't be," he muttered. Then, stepping through the haze, came Tim, clad in a sleek, upgraded loadout. At his side were the legendary supernaturals, ancient heroes long thought gone. "Tim, it's good to see you," the sheriff called out, a wave of relief in his voice. But there was no time for reunions. Gunfire erupted as Jim's troops opened fire. Everyone ducked for cover. "Karen, stay inside the ship with the others," Tim ordered. Karen nodded and the ramp lifted hastily. "Let's do this," said Colton, flashing a confident grin, as his good friends, Travis, Bradley, Ken, and Doug, stood beside him. The five supernaturals soared into the sky, striking like lightning, tearing through the enemy ranks with effortless grace, each soldier falling like ants before giants. "All units, take down those supes," Jim shouted, as starships rained fire from above. Sheriff Tim and his squad used the chaos as cover, breaking from their position and charging into the battlefield. Tim led the way, eyes locked on his brother. "Ah, there you are," Jim sneered. "Let's see what you've really got." The two brothers collided in a brutal melee, fists flying, weapons clashing, while the dispatch team held the line, mowing down Jim's foot soldiers. Just when the tide began to turn, a new fleet of Jim ships warped in from the clouds above, blanketing the sky in dread once more. Tim swung at his brother, but Jim caught his arm mid-strike and fired a shot point-blank into Tim's shoulder. "Ah!" Tim cried out, stumbling back as pain ripped through him. Jim smirked. "This has been fun, brother, but I have bigger things to attend to." Above them, the clouds cracked open. A massive mothership descended from the heavens, casting a dark shadow over the battlefield. All movement ceased as friend and foe alike looked up in awe and fear. "We're not done yet," Tim shouted, surging forward. But just before he could reach him, Jim was lifted into the air by a tractor beam, vanishing into the colossal vessel. No. Tim dropped to his knees, fists clenched in rage. His torment wasn't over. Far from it. Suddenly, with a flash of light, armoured Jim soldiers teleported into the field. Larger, more advanced, and deadlier than anything they'd seen before. Each was armed with heavy plating and powerful weaponry. Before Tim could react, he turned and found himself staring down the barrel of a soldier's rifle. "Tim, no!" Sheriff Tim screamed, diving in. The shot fired. Sheriff Tim took the bullet to the heart. He hit the ground hard, blood pouring from the wound. "No!" Tim fired back instantly, nailing the soldier with a perfect headshot. He rushed to the sheriff's side, panic setting in. Uncle Louis sprinted over, and the two of them dragged Sheriff Tim behind a chunk of rubble. "You're gonna be okay. We'll patch you up," Uncle Louis muttered, hands trembling as he fumbled through a blood-stained first aid kit. Sheriff Tim coughed, blood bubbling from his lips. He looked at them with a weak grin. "Just like the good old times, huh?" he said, trying to laugh, his voice cracked and frail. Tim and Louis couldn't hold back their tears. "I can't wait to get some cold ones. After this is over," Sheriff Tim chuckled faintly, his breath slowing as his soul slipped away. "Me too, Sheriff. Me too," Uncle Louis whispered, voice cracking as tears welled in his eyes. "All right, let's patch you up," Tim said, his voice shaky with hope, glancing back at the sheriff, waiting for a reply. "Sheriff?" he asked, but there was no response. "Sheriff Tim, stay with us, please," Uncle Louis cried. desperation taking hold. Chicago Guy and Tyrone huddled around the fallen hero, silent, staring at the lifeless body of their friend. A heavy stillness settled over them. "No!" Louis roared, his grief twisting into fury. He rose from cover and cocked his rifle. "This is for you, Sheriff," he muttered, charging the battlefield alone, hopelessly outnumbered. "Louis, what are you doing?" Tyrone shouted, but Louis was already in the fray, mowing down Jim's soldiers with righteous rage. The pain didn't slow him. He pushed forward through gunfire, screaming a primal cry that echoed across the battlefield. Even the misfits and their elves turned at the sound to help the others. Timothy Krampus snarled, angered that his prey was escaping. But before he could give chase, "Timothy!" a thunderous voice rang out. From the flaming wreckage of the workshop, a scorched, half-burned Carney Claws charged through the smoke, tackling Timothy violently into the snow. "You left me to die!" Carney roared, slamming Timothy's horns into the ground, pummeling him with burning fists. Blow after blow landed until... Crack! Carney screamed, his fists broken from Timothy's immensely tough skin. "I thank you, Carney Claws," Timothy growled with a sick grin. What have I done?" Carney whispered in horror as Timothy's body began to pulse with a haunting green light. His charred skin glowed as power surged within him. A thunderous blast erupted from Timothy's core, disintegrating Carney Claws in an instant. As the smoke cleared, Timothy stood untouched, his eyes fixed on the misfits in the distance, just as they pulled Uncle Louis to safety. Meanwhile, the battlefield was consumed by chaos. More Jims teleported in from above, overwhelming the supernaturals. Tim spotted Timothy standing alone in the firelight, alive and unscathed. "Oh my God, he's alive!" Tim gasped. The Tim soldiers turned to see the beast awaiting him. "You all hold off the Jims," Tim ordered. "I've got him, but he's too strong. You'll die," the orgasmic cow cried. "Ricky, do you have a hammer?" Tim asked calmly. Ricky blinked. Yeah, he said, reaching into his dense fur and pulling one out. "Thanks," Tim said, gripping it tightly. With his other hand, he drew a deagle from his belt and stepped toward the enemy. "I'm gonna make this quick," Timothy sneered, claws flexing. "I've got a cow to kill." Their eyes locked. Tim cocked the pistol as he traversed forward with haste. Timothy roared and lunged. Tim fired, disorienting him just long enough to close the gap and slam the hammer into his skull, knocking him back. The crowd around them gasped. Tim's strength was unexpected. "You bastard! You'll die for that!" Timothy screamed, clawing at Tim's gut and kicking him 20 feet backward into the snow. Tim groaned but stood fast, dodging another swipe from the Krampus's claws and landing another hammer strike. Timothy's body flickered again, building toward another surge. "I said die!" Timothy bellowed, unleashing a shockwave that hurled the heroes backward. The supernaturals dove in, but the tide was turning. The Jim army was endless. Tim's soldiers were falling by the second. "What do we do?" Crocus cried out as starships surrounded them. Then, a massive ship streaked in overhead. It fired into the battlefield, clearing a path before landing beside the remaining team. A man in a white lab coat stepped out. "Misfits, come with me, now." With no other option, everyone scrambled aboard. The Misfits, the Stevens family, the Supernaturals, the dispatch team. Everyone who could still move dashed into the ship, covered by the others. As the hatch sealed, the ship launched into the stars. And then, silence. The noise of battle, the screams, the chaos, all gone. A haunting quiet filled the room. "Listen up," the man in the lab coat commanded. Beside him stood the 3 Tim mayors. "Mayors?" Tim said, stunned. "You're all okay?" The mysterious man in the lab coat suddenly seemed frightened at the sight of Tim as he revealed himself from the crowd, as if he'd seen him before. In an attempt to recompose himself, he glanced off into the stars. "It seems I arrived too late to stop the chaos," the man said. "You see, we have been watching you all for some time. I was sent to retrieve you, orgasmic cow, before it's too late." "Wait, me? Why me?" the orgasmic cow asked. "Look, there's a war unfolding across the galaxy against the Jims. We didn't think the other Tim worlds would be affected too. This was all meant to be kept a secret. Unfortunately, Earth is no longer safe," said Mayor Timbus. Wait. Did you just say a galactic war?" Chicago Guy shouted. Panic rose in the room. "We haven't seen anything like this since Croker," Travis muttered grimly. "Everyone, please," the man said, calming the crowd. "We are aware of your great power and potential, orgasmic cow, and we believe that you are the only key to saving this universe," he said dramatically. "How did this escalate so quickly?" Ricky asked with perplexion. "We must travel to a hidden world, K2HB. There we build an army. We train. There is little time. We must be ready for—" The man stopped. "For what?" Doug demanded. The man paused. "The end of everything." The crowd fell into shocked silence. "There is little I can say. The information is too dangerous for anyone else to hear," said the man. "How long will it take to get there?" Mr. Unicorn asked. Voices rose. Panic, fear, confusion. Tim suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs to get everyone's attention. "Everyone!" Silence followed. The scientist jumped back once more, eager to hear Tim's next words. "Look at us!" Tim shouted. "We might be the last people left on Earth. What other choice do we have?" Everyone fell quiet as they gazed towards the massive window of the ship. Earth was in flames. Starships circled, clashing in battle. "Our home," Krampus whispered, a tear rolling down his cheek. Ethan ran to his mother, sobbing. "I'm so sorry," he cried as she held him close. Chicago Guy and Tyrone tended to Uncle Louie's wounds. Doug embraced Avery and comforted Emily and Wyatt. The last 6 elves of their kind cried softly. The orgasmic cow looked at the others. They knew Tim was right. "Who are you?" the orgasmic cow asked the man. "My name is Dr. Kaswata, but you can just call me Kavish. Believe me, I'm furious too. I once came from Earth. Now look at it. Alas, we must move forward, as this is our only chance of survival. I'll explain more once we near closer to our destination." The ship soared away from Earth, the place they'd once called home, now just a burning memory. They were now voyaging toward the unknown, into the stars, toward a war greater than anything they had faced before. A future filled with pain, but maybe, just maybe, hope too. Meanwhile, the North Pole, Timothy Krampus stood alone amid the wreckage of war, the battlefield burning around him. Smoke curled into the dark sky, blotting out the stars. The orgasmic cow had slipped through his claws again. His breath was ragged, his face twisted in fury. His skin, torn and oozing with unnatural fluids, began to fuse with the metal claws grafted to his hands. Flesh melded with steel, hissing as if the planet itself rejected his form. He let out a low growl. The battle behind him faded, gunfire slowing to echoes, explosions turning to distant murmurs. The world dulled, colours bled away. The snow beneath him turned a sickly grey. Pain flooded his limbs like acid in his veins. His monstrous body could no longer contain the transformation. He dropped to one knee. His dark green veins began to glow, pulsing with radioactive light. Then, without warning, he threw his head back and screamed. A violent column of green energy burst from his core, vaporizing the ruins around him, incinerating friend and foe alike in a wave of raw power. The ground cratered. Skeletons remained where armies once stood. Timothy collapsed, clawing at the dirt. He blinked through the smoke, his visions spinning. There, strewn in the ash, several intact vials shimmered faintly, the horned pickle serums that Carney Claws once had on him. Carney was now nothing more than scorched bone and steaming viscera. Timothy reached for a vial with trembling hands, but before he could grasp it, a voice. "Timothy!" The sound slithered through the air like ice down his spine. He clutched his head as the voice echoed again, louder, deeper, impossible to place. "You're dying! Get out of my head!" Timothy roared, thrashing as the world bent and twisted around him. Reality itself blurred. The stars seemed to spiral. A shadow stood before him, rotund, unmoving, watching him as the chaos danced around it. "You must feed," the voice boomed. "You must evolve. Only then will you have the power to finish what you started." "Shut up!" Timothy spat, his face contorting in rage. He gripped the first vial, his claws barely able to steady it. His eyes locked on the fluid inside, a swirling green storm. "Do it!" the shadow commanded. Timothy jabbed the syringe into his chest and screamed as the serum tore through him like molten fire. "Ah!" His eyes burst wide, glowing bright green. Veins throbbed, muscles spasmed, bones cracked. "More!" The voice howled. Timothy obeyed. He grabbed another and stabbed it into his left shoulder, his arm doubling in size, claws growing longer, sharper. More! The third vial slammed into his bicep, the fourth and fifth into his abdomen. Each injection brought a new wave of agony and strength. His scream became a roar. His body exploded in size, muscles stretching, skin turning a decaying shade of stone grey. Horns erupted from his spine, chest, face. His mouth split into jagged rows of teeth. His eyes glowed like twin suns. Green lightning cracked around him as the sky split open. He rose into the air, levitated by something unseen. Arms spread wide. Power bled from him in every direction. He sent out 3 massive shockwaves, carving trenches across continents, tearing mountains in half. And then, a final blast. A colossal beam of emerald energy shot into the heavens, piercing the atmosphere. Starships orbiting Earth swerved wildly to avoid it. Some weren't fast enough. They imploded, one by one, sucked into the gravity of Timothy's raw power. Then silence. Timothy plummeted back to Earth, smashing into the charred soil with an impact that shook the planet. Steam hissed from his body. The world held its breath. The mysterious figure calling to him was now gone. He rose slowly, hunched monstrous. His breath came in ragged volcanic gusts. His voice, once Timothy's, was now something far more ancient. Twisted, wrong, orgasmic, cow, he growled, his words slow and heavy with hatred. With a guttural snarl, he launched into the sky, leaving a streak of green light as he tore through the clouds, abandoning the world below. He was no longer just Timothy Krampus. He was something else now, and he would stop at nothing to finish what he started, to end the orgasmic cow and his misfits, once and for all, to be continued on an Orgasmic Christmas 2026.